top issues for voters. Alfonso Aguilar is the former chief of U.S. Office of Citizenship. Jose Maella is the CEO of the Libre Initiative. And welcome to you both. Thanks so much for coming on. Alfonso, let me start with you. Just 15 days away from Election Day. Concerns now of a new migrant caravan making its way to the U.S. southern border. How does this impact this election cycle?
Well, I think it just highlights how the measures that the Biden-Harris administration put in place during the summer to restrict asylum really haven't worked. They haven't dissuaded anyone from not making this trip. So we're still seeing large numbers of migrants making that very dangerous trip to our southern border. And the numbers confirm that. In August, which is the latest numbers we have from Homeland Security, we had 107,000 migrants arrive without proper documentation at our border, between our ports of entry and our ports of entry. So the numbers remain very high because even with those restrictions, they know that if they make it to the border and surrender themselves to Border Patrol, they can just say that they're afraid that they're going to be persecuted in their home country and they're going to be allowed in. So Americans need to understand this. Very little has changed. They're still letting people in large numbers, perhaps in smaller numbers than before, but they're still going to let them in. And people are still coming because they know that this administration is lawless. And they also know that if President Trump wins, if he's reelected, that lawlessness is going to end and they won't be able to come in as they have during these past 3 years and a half.
So let's talk the numbers here. We actually pulled them for you, Jose. We'll take a look right now. The U.S. seeing a number of attempted border crossings drop to under 54,000. Again, this is the month of September alone, so want to point that out. So, again, that's the lowest numbers of encounters this administration has seen. The number, though, still higher than what we saw under the Trump administration in Septembers of 2018 and 2019, and obviously dealing with the pandemic there in 2020. So it's marginally lower there, what you've seen in years prior, the administration prior. They're touting success with the Biden-Harris administration. Harris campaigning on tougher border restrictions, and she outlines her plan to do so. But for many of voters out there, they say she's in office right now. Does she not have the authority to talk to the president to get executive orders signed?
Yeah, look, I think there's something that the American people have figured out a long time ago that it seems that that the administration has yet to understand, is that this is a crisis for people living in the border, for people who are exposed to what's happening there. This is a crisis. And for the rest of America that's feeling the impact of this and seeing this, nobody wants to see this lawlessness. Like Alfonso mentioned, that is a dangerous trek. We should not be encouraging folks through bad incentives, right, that exist during this current policy of this administration to make that crossing. So I think they haven't taken it seriously. They're going to have a lot of rhetoric in the next 15 days saying that they are. They're probably going to tout those numbers, which, by the way, weren't great to begin with, right? We should not accept as Americans that it's okay to have that level of lawlessness, regardless of who's in office. But this administration in particular has failed on this issue. Hopefully, after this election, we get real leadership that's willing to work together, both House, Congress, and the president, to do something about this, because the status quo is just not acceptable.
Sure. And now there are concerns that this could turn violent with some of the people coming into this country. Reports of gang activity we've seen in Colorado, but now also reports happening in New York City. The NYPD actually saying specifically concerns about Tren de Aragua, one of the most violent gangs in the country. Here's some commentary on that.
Upwards of 50 robberies, 20 individuals arrested for upwards of 50 robberies and out of those 20 individuals, every single one of them is on the streets today.
And Alfonso, you let that sink in, for one, because you think about Times Square and how many tourists, people from out of town or out of the country even, like to come visit, and they want to do so in a safe way. But also NYPD was mentioning that some of these gang members are children. So if you look at sort of accountability, it wouldn't be the same as what an adult might face. Again, this is the video from Colorado, but you think about what's happening here. Alfonso, what do you take away from this warning from NYPD?
Well, it's very scary, and it shows the reality of what's happening. When you have unregulated, massive migration, a lot of these individuals easily can get in the country. A lot of them are minors. Remember that when you look at unaccompanied minors, over 70% are children between the ages of 12 and 17. So they're teenagers, and a lot are involved in criminal activity. So when you have this situation, a lot of very dangerous people are getting in. But let me say one more thing to talk about the numbers, because yes, it is true that the numbers have gone down in terms of encounters in between points of entry. But you have to also consider the people that are actually going directly to the points of entry without proper documentation and turning themselves in to the Border Patrol. So if you add those numbers, the number is very high per month. It remains 107,000, which is much higher than what the last month of the Trump administration. So I think that the Biden-Harris administration are manipulating numbers. The numbers remain very high.
Yeah, I was going to actually mention that and close with that. Just keep in mind that was 1 month. That was NBC News. You can take data points and spin it any way you want. I'm not accusing the network of doing that in any way, but that's how it reads. But it's very simple. More than 10 million encounters that we've seen under the administration as a whole thus far. The amount of unknown gotaways at this point, those on the terror watch list, obviously the one that was connected to ISIS-K with plans to again, attack in some violent manner on Election Day. This, according to authorities, that happening as well. So it needs to be looked at through that lens rather than the month of September in 2024. It's a much, much bigger issue. Alfonso Aguilar, thank you, and Jose Maya.